hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Pressures mounting on the PSNI Chief Constable, who said this evening he won't be stepping down. Simon Byrne attended a critical meeting with the policing board today. The chair of the Police Federation said he was disgusted and angered by Mr Byrne's statement, adding that he has to be condemned. A recent court ruling deemed his disciplinary actions against 2 junior officers unlawful. The decision was reportedly driven by concern Sinn Féin might withdraw support for policing, sparking accusations of appeasement from unionists. Well, here's Mr Byrne addressing the media earlier tonight.
I highlighted that after carefully reviewing the full judgment, I sought further advice. After consideration, the question of an appeal is now live. Further public commentary around this matter is not appropriate at this stage. Thank you.
Chief Constable, do you retain the support of the policing board?
That's a matter for the policing board.
Chief Constable, have you considered your position?
I'm not resigning.
Schools in England must immediately shut buildings made with a type of concrete that's prone to collapse until safety measures are put in place. Some schools will have to relocate children to other teaching spaces. More than 100 schools are being contacted before the start of the new term. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan says the government's keeping on top of doing all it can to deal with the issue. Junior doctors and consultants will be taking joint strike action in England for the first time across September and October. They'll walk out for 4 days in their long-running disputes over pay. The British Medical Association says consultants will strike on September 19th and 20th, with junior doctors also walking out on the 20th, followed by strikes on the 21st and 22nd. Now, both consultants and junior doctors will strike again on October 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Former NHS Trust Chairman Roy Lilly told Nigel Farage this evening consultants have failed to read the room.
I mean, I can't look a consultant in the eye that's, even if they're not doing private work, they're between 80 to 100 grand a year. They're highly educated people in doing the jobs they love and want. How they can turn their backs on people in this way and say, oh, it's the government that's made me do it. It's not the only person that makes them do it. It's the person that looks at them in the mirror when they clean their teeth in the morning. They make those decisions.
Grant Shapps has been appointed as the new Defence Secretary following the resignation of Ben Wallace. After 4 years in the job, he says he wants to explore different opportunities and spend more time with his family. Education Minister Claire Coutinho takes over as Energy and Net Zero Secretary, replacing Shapps. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle and joining me tonight are Josh Howie, fresh from the Big Apple, and Nick Dixon, well-worn from North London. How are you both? Good. You have been in America, you have been in New York.
I've been in America, I got back this morning, 10:30.
How does it feel?
It's like, imagine a country just full of Louis Schaeffers.
Hideous. That's like a paradise or a hell, depending on your perspective.
Well, he's got a lot of fans out there.
He has. Have you been to New York, Nick?
No. And I spent my whole day just at home watching boxing videos. I was watching the Usyk versus Dubois low blow controversy. So basically, I've spent the last 6 days studying a large Ukrainian man's testicles.
Haven't we all?
Plus, I've been watching the boxing.
Very good.
He's back.
He's back. You should go to New York, because then the headlines would be, big dog in the Big Apple.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to LA. It's hard doing gigs out there because they're weird Americans, aren't they? They're different.
Well, they laugh at stuff. It's very unnerving.
They laugh
at the wrong bits. Laugh at the setup. Well, that's not even the funny bit.
They applaud and they're enthusiastic and they're nice. We're not used to it. Anyway, we're going to have a look at the front covers of Friday's papers. The Daily Mail is leading with "How callous can you get?" I apologise if you can't see the image there. But believe me, that is what it says. The Telegraph has "Lockdown returns as schools shut over fears of collapse." The Guardian is leading with "A school chaos as buildings are shut over collapse fears." And this is the recurring front cover. The Times has the same story. The iNews has the same story. And the Express has "Why did it take 5 years to shut unsafe schools?" Those are your front pages. And we're going to start with Friday's Guardian. Josh, what have they got on the front page? We didn't see them earlier. I hope we can see them now.
Here we go.
Here we go.
That's what it looks like.
The technology's
image.
Oh, there it is.
Yay.
No, we've got it.
There we go. We're back. We're back. School chaos as buildings are shut over collapse fears. So this is something called aerated concrete. It's like
aerated concrete. So
it's like arrows, you know, chocolate arrow bars. It's just like that, but concrete.
I do know because we were talking about this on the show last night, and that was exactly the illusion that Leo Kearse came up with. And I've always said that you two think alike.
Indeed. So now, okay.
Yeah, your knowledge extends to chocolate.
Yeah, basically that's
so basically, they built this stuff back in between the 50s and the 90s, aerated, cheaper.
Supposedly, it's got a 30-year lifespan.
30-year lifespan,
and,
yeah.
And then someone has just done the maths and added 30 years to when they built this stuff. And gone, wait a minute, that's now. So let's
you would
close all
have
the
thought.
schools.
I would have thought. I mean, fair enough if you're building something, you know, like a potting shed. But if you're building a school, those things tend to last.
Yeah, set like an alarm clock.
Yeah.
30 years, or like for 25 years. Give yourself the 5 years lead in. But no, they've sort of gone, oh, wait a minute, all these buildings are going to possibly fall down. So let's just take all the kids out of school because that's what we need now. Is more kids out of school.
Absolutely. Nick, why did no one think of this when they were building? Why did they not think to themselves, you know, this might last, this might need to last?
Because, Andrew, Britain is broken and it's now literally falling apart because it's already metaphorically fallen apart. And I'm glad that we're covering this a second night in a row. We should do more stories on aerated concrete because it's really funny content. But, yeah, I say just shut schools at this point. They're constantly shutting anyway for pandemics and aerated concrete. Why even bother? You go online, you can learn everything anyway, and you go there, you just learn a load of woke CRT.
I think parents will disagree with you on this.
But I'm not a parent, so I can just make glib assertions.
But the government has said, to the headmasters and headmistresses or whatever, oh, you got to pay for it.
Right,
and already we've got school budgets heavily affected.
Well, Nick, to be fair, it's on the front cover of most of the papers. We do have to cover this, really. But I do kind of think it beggars belief. I cannot... And I'm not an architect. I have nothing to do with construction. I don't understand it. But even I know to use big...
Concrete.
Solid bricks
and
that don't fall down.
I've just had 2 weeks with the kids. If I have to spend one more day with them, I'm going to go mental.
By the way, they're planning in the future to give us rammed earth because concrete and glass are too bad for the environment. So we'll be in mud huts in the future.
Well, maybe mud huts will be better.
Bugs in some
I don't
mud
care.
huts.
As long as the kids are in school, that's all I care about.
Going on to the Daily Mail. So who's got this? Front cover of the Daily Mail.
Yes, I'll do this one for you, Andrew. How callous can you get is something I've been meaning to ask you for a while, but it's also the headline of the Daily Mail. And it's about, of course, the NHS strikes. And I'm guessing that the Mail is quite against them because they've made it pretty clear on the cover. But it is pretty brutal because they're going to have separate days for consultant strikes and junior doctor strikes. So consultants striking on September 19th to 20th, junior doctors on the 20th. And the people are saying it's going to be a Christmas Day level of staffing, which sounds incredibly poor. And the present is you die, basically, because
they're
no one's there.
They're going to overlap, though, aren't they?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
So I mean,
this is the first time that's ever happened.
So there's that. Okay. Now look, I'm one of those who do believe that you should be able to withhold your labour. You know, I do believe in the trade unions. I think this is important. But
see you later.
Not chatting nonsense.
Not live on air.
Not when I'm paying your wages.
Oh,
Josh.
okay. Yes. Sorry.
No one in this job would ever dare do it, would they? Because they'd be like, OK, we'll get someone else tomorrow.
Just take the knee and then you're out. It's all good.
My problem, Josh, with this is that actually isn't there an ethical point at this stage insofar as there are lots of people dying. The waiting lists are out of control. There was a story the other day about all these people dying because they can't get treatment. If I were in that, I might think actually at this point, I'm going to keep going with the job.
They've had a payoff of 6%.
They've had, exactly.
There's been, I believe, 1 million appointments that have been postponed over the last year.
This is, do you not?
I'm waiting. No, of course, there is a...
But you see my point, I can still be pro-strike in principle, but not in this case.
Not in practice.
No.
When people are, like you say, literally dying.
Yeah, if I strike, nothing happens. I mean, the station plummets and no one watches it anymore. But you know what I mean? Like, generally speaking, people don't die, do they?
There are fewer witty tweets.
Exactly, that's what happens.
Women's rights takes a step back if you were to resign.
Absolutely.
And I should just quickly add, they've got the story about Loch Ness, but that's so important. We're going to get to it later in detail.
We are going to hold Loch Ness back because you're staying up for Loch Ness, believe me. Right, we're going to move on to The Guardian. What have they got?
Yes, so they've got some of the stories that we've just talked about, but they've also got a Defence Chief Shapps vows to fight for the military.
Oh, sorry, this is The Times. My mistake.
Yeah,
this is The Times.
And basically, Shapps is taking over. Rishi Sunak has got him in.
So he's Defence Secretary now.
Yeah, to replace Ben Wallace, who has actual experience in the forces.
Yeah, but you've got to start somewhere, Josh.
Well, they've started way back.
Yeah, but Shapps has transport experience,
well, exactly.
and the army does have trucks and things.
There is the need to communicate. That's
all of that
has been put forward.
Transferable skills, Josh.
A senior minister, unnamed, says it's like letting a child into the nuclear bunker and encouraging him to play.
Well, that's mean. I think that's mean. And what about this Claire Coutinho, who has become Energy Secretary? She's actually depicted on the front of The Times. I say depicted. It's a photograph.
Doesn't she sound like a footballer?
She sounds like she should be a footballer.
Yeah, Coutinho just sounds like she plays for Liverpool up front. But, yeah, I mean, ostensibly, well, I don't know anything about Claire Coutinho, so I can comment on Shapps. Ostensibly, he is a kind of comic figure, and it's a kind of crony appointment, and Putin's not going to be scared, is he? But maybe he is good, because the thing, it says here he's one of the most effective cabinet ministers, so maybe the caricature in the media is wrong, and he just is actually highly competent.
Do you think in both of these cases, with Claire Coutinho and also Grant Shapps, that they are inheriting kind of poison chalices at this point? The army, obviously, this is a bad time to be Defence Secretary with Ukraine. There's lots of procedural scandals going on in the army at the moment. That's not good. So do you think that this is maybe not something he might enjoy? Because he can't do well, can he, at this point?
Well, I think that, no, he can't do well, but at the same time, it is arguably a big promotion. So I'm sure he's probably quite...
But similarly with her, she's becoming Energy Secretary at a time when...
I think she's the first minister of the last intake, like UFPs or whatever.
But I mean, with all the ULEZ stuff and with the net zero brief, I mean, it's not... in other words, there are better times to...
Yeah, and I'm sure she'll be great in 14 years when the Tories get back in again.
Well, I think you're probably right there. But you said it with such joy. Schadenfreude, almost.
It's going to be bad, though.
I thought it was unpleasant, actually. We're going to move on to the front cover of The Sun. Nick, what have they got?
Yeah, they've got You're Wrong, and this is Hero Ben, I had your back for 15 years, Harry, and this is Ben McBean, who lost his arm and leg.
Ben McBean.
Mm-hmm. He lost his arm and leg fighting in Afghanistan. But the point he's making is that Harry was wrong to criticise the media by saying that they don't support veterans. And his argument is they do support veterans. And it's a little bit of self-promotion from The Sun, because he says, I can say hand on heart that the British media, especially The Sun, did cover the stories of veterans. So, I don't know, I don't want to be cynical, but it seems quite convenient for The Sun that he's a very glowing piece about The Sun.
On the other hand, I think we should say, in fairness, The Sun has always promoted the Help for Heroes campaign.
Yeah.
It does make a big deal about veterans. So, and of course, this guy, having lost his limbs and then to have all this support from The Sun, he probably thought this is unfair, you know. But of course, The Sun love it, and it's on the front cover.
It's also a high status sort of liberal elite opinion to criticise the, say everything's the media and the gutter media. They're not allowed to say, like the Hugh Edwards thing. You just say, oh, it's the media, but it's not always the media.
Yeah, but I would argue in this case it's because Harry obviously has a massive, justifiably, some would say, issue with the media. So he's looking out for any issue. But of course, then it feels like it's just gone too far. They're not actually all bad all the time.
But it sounds like they're still friends. I mean, he's sort of saying they still get on.
Yeah, he says like he bought him some beer, he met his family.
Yeah, so it's not like he wants to have a go at him.
But he's just saying, but he's wrong in this case. And then maybe that's nothing wrong with saying that.
And actually, Harry is wrong in all cases, on everything.
Exactly. And friends tell you when you're wrong.
You're just angry he's not bringing you any barrels of beer.
Well, I don't drink beer, but I wouldn't accept them from Harry anyway. No, I wouldn't go that far. He's all right. He'll be all right.
You would accept it, but you sell it on eBay.
I'll sell it. He needs to move on and just, say that Meghan has brainwashed him. Then he'll be fine.
OK, well, that's the view of Nick Dixon.
That's and Andrew
Not
Doyle.
the station, just Nick. But anyway, that is it for part one. Join us in part two for a public apology, real-life Call of Duty, and we'll find out what the Labour Party has blown £500,000 on. See you in a minute.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Earlier on GB News Radio.
So starting with the Daily Mail, Leo, welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. I'm still Andrew Doyle, and I'm here with Josh Howie and Nick Dixon, kicking things off this section with Friday's Daily Mail. And what's this about tweeting getting ornithologists into trouble? Josh, do you know?
Yes, RSPB boss apologises for tweet branding Rishi Sunak, Michael Gove and Theresa Coffey liars over plan to scrap water pollution rules for new homes.
Right.
So what this is the largest nature conservation charity is very angry because the government said, look, we're definitely going to be... we're not going to be changing these EU laws,
yes,
which are about basically water neutrality, which is that anything that is added bad to water supplies like feces and whatnot by building homes is going to be offset. And that basically they're now literally watering that down in that instead of the house builders having to pay for it, basically we're going to be paying.
And why does that affect the RSPB?
Because they basically are calling them liars because that's their job is to maintain the environment or whatever. So, but
specifically birds.
No. Oh, no. This is.
It started with birds.
It's not, but it's bigger. It's the
no
biggest.
pun intended.
It's not just birds.
They branched out from birds.
Well, birds is in their name. They started with, but that was in the 19th century.
But now they're big. They're big environmental for everybody.
So the thing about this is, it's one of these tweets where the company. It's not a company, but the institution has tweeted out Rishi Sunak, Michael Gove, Theresa Coffey, liars. You lie, and you lie again. Now, that doesn't sound like an official tweet. That sounds like some intern being overzealous.
Yeah.
Is that what's happened?
It was just a picture of them with liars across the top of it. It was not particularly... In the political world, it wasn't that harsh. It wasn't any worse than most Labour adverts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was not that bad, so I don't really care about that or the apology. What I care about is how hard it is to build anything. So that when you want to build 100,000 new homes, which is nowhere near enough to solve our problems, they still try and block that.
Yeah.
And at least it's going ahead now, but it's so difficult to do anything without, like, affecting, like, a bird's feather or something.
Yeah.
But that isn't the issue here.
It is.
Personally, I actually think that they were right, but they were right also to apologise for the rhetoric. That was why. So they're not apologising because they got it wrong, but you're right, there needs to be more homes, but this isn't the reason why. It's still going ahead. It would have gone ahead. The difference is now we're the ones who are footing the bill for it.
Okay.
And because of that, because of this announcement from the government, now all of the share prices, shareholders of all the house building companies of all their shares have increased.
Yes.
And whatever. So basically, we're the ones who are getting it.
OK, we're going on to the Express now. Penny Mordaunt has some big ideas. Nick, you've got this?
Yeah, Penny Mordaunt backs plans for 16-year-olds in Britain to enrol in national service. And you hear that and you go, oh, that's quite interesting. Maybe we'll be like Greece. We'll have like a year of compulsory national service and it'll toughen kids up. Then you find out it's 2 weeks. It's not compulsory. You have to opt into it. It's not even an opt-out. You have to actually say, I want to do this. So it's kind of pointless and nothingy. And it's come from the think tank Onward. I'm not saying it's bad, but I don't think it's really going to do anything.
We should clarify, it's not like conscription. They're talking about a 2-week civic exploration trip.
And that's what I said. It's a civic exploration trip, and it's only opt-in anyway. It's like a field trip that kids might want to do.
So what is it, like picking up litter, that sort of thing?
Building new homes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why they're calling it national service. National service is the kind of thing where if you'd said to me, you know, as a teenager, you have to go to the army, I'd have hated it. But as an adult, and seeing how our country has morally declined, I now advocate a year national service.
But this is like a regular announcement. This is basically, it's like, you know, the first sort of sparrow appears at spring. When the Tories make this announcement, you know that there's an election coming.
Right, I see. That's what it is.
It's like a regular thing.
Do you think, Josh, that there should be conscription?
I think that there needs to be something more in terms of this idea of some kind of civic, whether it's a course, whether it's some extra curriculum, is a really good idea because we need teenagers, myopic teenagers, need to understand that they are part of something larger.
Right, and you've got so many kids, we could rebuild our army.
Exactly.
And our housing problem.
Well, but, you know, Penny Mordaunt makes the case that, you know, young people need to find a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, and that actually a year in the army would do them some good. And also, of course, most of them are sort of meeting on TikTok to smash up JD Sports. So I think some time in the army would be good. And the other, from a sort of more left-wing perspective, it's quite good having conscription because politicians then get nervous about engaging in wars overseas because they know their own kids are going to have to fight in them. And I think that's kind of an interesting approach.
That's an interesting thing here, yeah. I mean, we could be moving into that whole Starship Troopers thing where you can only get the right to vote if you have joined...
Become a citizen once you kill a bug.
Yes. I'm just saying that could be something. If we can kill the bugs in the studio.
Yeah, well, in the future we'll be eating bugs instead of killing them, but...
Well, that's your view, but I'm a vegetarian, so I'm not going to buy into that.
Well, you won't have a choice, unfortunately. It'll be attached to your, you know, social credit and your digital cash card.
Is that what you believe?
It's just what's going to happen.
Well, we shall find out if Nostradamus Nick Dixon is correct. Join us again in 12 years' time and we shall see. But first, Friday's Times. Josh, something even more valuable to our carers than clapping.
Money!
Yay!
GP average salaries rise by a quarter in a decade. So they've risen 23% to a record, basically 118,000. So £120,000 a year. That's the average salary.
Yeah.
So it ranges from, I think, if you're on a basic salary, it's like 70 grand, and it can go up to like 150. Men supposedly earn more than women, but that's because they're working more if they're doing less childcare.
And they're better people.
So they're doing.
You only insist to see a male GP when you go in.
Yeah, that's because of the nature of my problems.
They're doing well financially, but, you know, to train to be a doctor, it's a big commitment. Years and years and years in university, lots of cost.
It's 2 years. 2 years.
Why shouldn't they get the big bucks?
Yeah, especially if you're staffing your own, running your own practice, as they point out here. That is obviously very costly. So I do get that. The only thing is, it's strange because they claim that appointments have gone up, you know, 1.36 million from 1.24 million in 2022. But the average experience of the consumer seems to be that it's very hard to get an appointment, and yet they're claiming through the stats here that it's actually all getting better, but it's not really the feeling on the ground, is it?
Why don't they elevate nurses' salaries at a similar rate?
Because they don't do 7 years of study.
All of that.
Whatever.
But they know so much and they are so valuable.
For
and
sure.
so
No, I think they absolutely should get more. And I think that they should take it directly from the GP salaries.
Well, we should sort of have them fight it out.
I just like the way you were so careful, because no one can take an anti-nurse stance. It's like the least popular thing.
No,
in the
well, my
country.
mother-in-law's a nurse, so I'm just thinking about Sunday lunch.
I'm against them. I'm just going to, just for balance.
You're against nurses.
Yeah.
Just don't like nurses.
Yep, sorry.
Yep. OK, let's move on to the Daily Mail now. Nick, there's nothing worse than your family showing you up, is there?
I've always said that, Andrew. This is ex-MP Antoinette Sandbach threatens to sue Cambridge University, saying her privacy has been invaded after academics' award-winning research showed her ancestor made his fortune out of West Indies slave plantations. And that's such a long headline. It's basically the entire story. But what's happened is Malik Al-Nasir has published this research, and it's kind of embarrassed her, and more than embarrassed, really. It's kind of made her feel vulnerable because it says that she's tied to, historically, you know, her family are tied to slavery. And, of course, the problem with that is, and she now is sort of vaguely threatening, can you take it down, you know? And obviously, if you're a public figure and the way activists are so rabid now on social media, of course you might want that to happen. But, of course, with academic freedom, I don't really see how that's practicable.
I think ultimately we're all related to some nasty pieces of work. If you go back far enough, there's no way that...
like my dad.
But there's that. So how... Well, I don't know your father, but, you know what I mean, though? I think it's a bit unfair to smear her just because she had...
Of course, I mean, when you go back that far, 400 years or whatever...
Wasn't everyone a bit of a wrong one?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, the number of ancestors you have sort of increases exponentially. So she might have the same name, but she's also got 1,000 other people
That's
part
true.
of her tree.
In fact, aren't we probably all related, if you go back far enough to her?
To what? Yeah. So I mean, it just becomes meaningless past a certain point.
Yes, exactly.
My ancestors are nice.
So, no, I did some research. You are related to Dr. Crippen.
Really?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, I condemn slavery, Andrew. Can I just say that she's also condemned slavery?
She's very brave.
She said it's appalling. And that is a tough stance to take.
Isn't that incredible that people feel the need to express their opposition to slavery? Because my default expectation is that everyone is opposed to slavery, right?
I'm going to be just for balance on the panel. I'm going to be pro-slavery and anti-nurse, just to provide a helpful balance.
Although there was some... They're saying, the BBC is saying that she described it as abhorrent slavery, but she seemed to suggest there was a similarity between the treatment of African slaves and the treatment of Victorian housewives.
Just very quickly, how can she sue for this? Like, surely, if people want to sort of do some historical delving about someone's family, you can't sue them. If it's a fact, you can't sue them.
And that's probably the answer, is that she probably can't.
She probably can't, but she's going to try anyway. Well, good for her.
She appears to have threatened legal action, it says, which is very, very...
And as he rightly says, you can't demand censorship on that.
No. OK, we're going to finish this section off with The Guardian, Josh. Some big bills for the Labour Party.
Yeah, Labour costs pass £500,000 in hearing over leaked anti-Semitism report. So, when Keir Starmer got in, finally they were going to... it was all going to come out, the anti-Semitism crisis about Labour. The EHRC were basically reported that Labour broke the law, they discriminated against Jews. And as the former Labour leaders were leaving, Corbyn and Seamus Milne, who was his Director of Communications, and Carrie Murphy and whatnot, they basically, or allegedly, put out this report or leaked this report, and it was essentially like to cover their butts.
What was the report that they leaked, though? Not the report into anti-Semitism.
No, it was. It was basically, but they were sort of using it as their own internal report into anti-Semitism. And really, it was trying to sort of tar the whistleblowers, the original whistleblowers of the anti-Semitism, and try and bring them and muddy the waters and all of this stuff. And it did its job. It basically gave a way for all the cranks on the left to go, hey, look at this, there's all this weird stuff here. And they sent a tweet out about Diane Abbott and all this, whatever. But it didn't actually deal with the real crux of the anti-Semitism that had existed in Labour under Corbyn.
So it's not just that this has absolutely riven the Labour Party into the whole thing. It's also costing them a hell of a lot of money.
So what this case is specifically about is Labour, basically the present Labour leadership, trying to get to the bottom of who leaked this document. Because Keir Starmer got in, didn't want it to come out because he saw this document for exactly what it was, which was a thing to just appease all the cranks. But they leaked it anyway. And now they're basically suing to essentially get to the bottom of it.
Nick, any thoughts here?
Well, I didn't bother preparing for this one, because I knew there'd be very little time to talk after Josh had tackled anti-Semitism in Labour, which is his favourite topic. But I will say this is great because it points out that this is terrible for Labour because they're airing their dirty laundry just before an election. And that's good because Labour are going to be awful for the country. So
but it's not... I don't think it's going to stop them getting in.
Well, it's not, but... try.
But also, there were concerns how much this was going to even possibly bankrupt Labour, but actually...
It's only 500,000.
No, but this is added on to... Because the people in the report who were mentioned, these whistleblowers, they've managed to sue Labour because their personal information was given out there, and that's why...
So there's Labour... several million bills.
There could be multiple lawsuits.
This is more than 500,000. But Labour's finances are doing fine because they are going to get in.
We shall see. Another prediction, this time from Josh Howie. Yeah. That's it for part 2. Join us after the break for MPs defending stoners, the health benefits of vaping, and Trump's latest antics. See you in a minute.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a mishmash tomorrow, a misty, murky start. Some places will see a few showers, but some spots will see some warm sunshine too. It's a messy situation because we've got an old area of low pressure hanging around, and these weather fronts have been bringing cloud and rain across many areas through the day. The possibility of 1 or 2 heavy showers just in the far southeast through the night, staying fairly damp and murky and misty over parts of northern England, and some of that light rain trickling into southern Scotland as well. Northern Scotland staying dry and clear and quite chilly. Temperatures well down into single figures. Further south, a pretty mild night. Temperatures holding up in the mid-teens for some. Into Friday, as I said, a bit of a mishmash. The Midlands, northern England, parts of southern Scotland, fairly drab for much of the day, actually overcast. Pretty cloudy too for Northern Ireland. Some light rain and drizzle here and there, especially to the east of the Pennines. Further south, something a bit brighter, sunny spells, but there will also be a sprinkling of showers, mostly dry over northern Scotland. 20 degrees here, 23 possibly in the south with some sunshine. A cool feel, though, with that more persistent cloud over northern England, 16 or 17 here. Saturday may also start a bit misty. There'll be 1 or 2 isolated showers, but for most of us, Saturday looks pretty good if you're after dry and bright weather. Some decent spells of sunshine and turning warmer with temperatures more widely over 20 degrees Celsius, and Sunday also set fair with some warm sunny spells. Goodbye.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You down, mother. Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. We're going to get back into it with The Telegraph. And Nick, you're all about forgiveness, aren't you? Everyone should be given a second chance.
Yes, I am, though not in this case. No, I sort of am. This is cocaine and cannabis users should not be prosecuted for first possession offences, MPs say. And it's a cross-party committee of MPs, the Home Affairs Committee, with a lot of Tories in there. Sort of, I was going to say surprisingly, but not really surprisingly, because the modern Tories are just big libs, aren't they? But basically, it's about not having a criminal record if you just have, one charge, and you should be able to avoid a criminal record. I get that, and I approve of that, really, because you don't want to be saddled with a criminal record for, like, a minor cannabis offence. Where this goes wrong, though, is it claims that drugs should be treated as a health problem, and this is a sort of hippie idea that's never worked. And it even suggests they should have safe drug consumption centres, which ends up like the Amsterdam in The Wire, a kind of, like, hellish area of just, like, drug taking.
Do you not believe that addiction is a factor here? And that addiction is a kind of illness?
I don't think addiction is a disease. I believe in old-fashioned things like prevention through, disincentives, old-fashioned things that used to work. And I've never believed that addiction is a disease. No one's been able to prove that.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I totally disagree.
Well, obviously.
But... No, obviously. I do agree. Some things I do agree.
Sometimes you agree, believe it or not.
The one thing, yes, we do agree on, first of all, yes, on first case offence. So this is the first time someone gets caught, not the first time they ever do it.
Yeah.
But, it's like a sort of a speed awareness course.
Yes.
But with speed.
OK.
And...
on principle, do you think it's a good idea?
Yes, because it isn't like The Wire, which is the greatest TV show ever made, apart from this one. We're talking about one room, a safe room so that people don't OD. The other thing is it's so few people who commit so many crimes. Like in one city, they're talking about like £1 million worth of damage just from a handful of people. So it's dealing with them and dealing with these mental health issues. I'm reading a really good book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Gabor Mate. He's a Canadian guy, and it's just a lot of evidence from different places around the world that prove that dealing with these underlying mental health issues and the reason why people take drugs and are addicted to drugs has a massive impact.
I mean, in a way, Nick, isn't that along your lines of prevention? Like, if you deal with the mental health issue, you prevent the drug crisis.
Wrong with that. And you're talking about the guy that did the therapy session with Prince Harry, and it is interesting. But to be honest, it's probably a resources problem. They don't have the resources to punish these people if they're honest. But Andrew, I'm never going to be convinced that doing coke is a health problem. I'm sorry.
No. OK, fair enough. We're going to move on now to The Telegraph. More news about the great health benefits of vaping. Josh, I've never really got this because I thought vaping was just water, basically. What do they call it? Water vapour.
Yeah, but with nicotine is the idea.
So the nicotine is the problem.
Yeah, so it doesn't have all of the cancerous chemicals that go along with it.
Yeah.
But what they're saying here is, and this is, as Lewis would say, a non-article, in that, let me read the headline. Boys who smoke or vape in early teens risk damaging future children's genes. So there is evidence that the only evidence following the science is that actually smoking cigarettes has led to changes in the genes, which is epigenetic changes, which are like, so when you have kids, you're passing on those bad genes, like it's going to make your genes worse. And so that kids can be like obese or have asthma. But there's no evidence that kids who vape
Well, that's what I'm confused about, because the article says that the experts themselves, the researchers, said they think it's likely vaping could, but there's no evidence. Well, then why are we even talking about vaping?
It's totally misleading, but it is interesting to see that just smoking cigarettes, this evidence, because they pointed before and they've said, that people where their fathers smoke, the kids will have worse health outcomes. And you might argue that it would be for societal reasons. If they smoke, they're less likely to maybe have some of the advantages or have a healthy diet and all these other things. But what they're now saying is there's evidence that it actually goes down to your genes.
Well, that's very interesting. But, I mean, vaping, people do seem down on it. Needlessly.
It does look quite silly.
It looks silly, yeah, I get that. From an aesthetic point of view, I'm with them.
Smells great.
But it smells good. They come in all lovely fruity flavours.
But it kills your kids in 6 generations. That's the downside.
Yeah, but they're going to be dead anyway or eating cockroaches.
Yeah.
So.
It is fascinating how much is genetic. I was talking to Simon Evans about this today on our forthcoming podcast coming out soon. But it is fascinating how much is genetic. Well, because when you get down that route, you get in some very dodgy areas as well where people get very upset when you suggest everything is genetics. But
also, surely anything that you eat as a parent will have some kind of genetic impact on your offspring. So we shouldn't worry too much.
This is when they're really young themselves, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
The other thing is there's no evidence that it's the mother smoking has the same impact genetically. So smoke away, mums.
Bad advice from Josh Howie there. We're going to move on to the eye now. What's Mason Greenwood been up to, Nick?
Well, Mason Greenwood's ousting from Man United prompted rise in misogynistic posts on Facebook and X is the claim. And, of course, he's just left Man United because of all the controversy. He was never charged, but there was too much controversy, so he just decided to leave, or the club has decided. But I'm sceptical of these claims because you see these claims that hate speech has risen. We've seen Mariana Springs say things like this at the BBC. We've seen James Clayton claim this to Elon Musk, and he couldn't back it up.
It's all anecdotal.
It's all anecdotal. And what is hate? And, of course, Twitter and X, as it's now called, are full of awful things that trolls say. But, you know, the solution is not the online safety bill, which is what they're mentioning here. They've added an amendment to the online safety bill, and they're saying, well, this is why, because of things like this. But as you say, it's anecdotal, and I'm much more worried about the suppression of that. And I'd be saying that whoever was being attacked, not just women, even if it was a systemically oppressed group like straight white men, I'd be saying it because it's much more dangerous. Censorship is more dangerous than some annoying trolls.
Right. I mean, this is the point, isn't it, Josh? That, well, firstly, Facebook and X aren't responsible for misogynistic comments. The misogynists are responsible for misogynistic comments, aren't they?
Of course, yeah. There's a few things that are interesting about this. One is, like, again, it comes down to what the examples, and they're sort of also going to say, like, who's going to police what is misogynistic? Now, one of the posts that they quote is, as a man, take 23 hours to fear women and use 1 hour to drink water. Now, I don't know what that means. I would like Nick, please explain your message.
I was going to mention that one. It is pretty funny, that, isn't it?
What do you mean when you wrote that?
Yeah, well, I just was trying to be humorous, Josh. I mean,
it sounds like a Confucian proverb.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's proverb feel. I mean, that is silly, isn't it? They shouldn't have used that example because they've undermined their own case. 23 hours to fear women, 1 hour to drink water. I'd get it down to 10 minutes to drink the water.
I mean, but you're absolutely right. There's the subjective notion of what is misogynistic anyway, which is the same with everything else. And, of course,
there is absolutely misogyny online. And,
you can find anything on Twitter. You can find the most horrendous things, absolutely. No one's denying it.
But they also use... But then the other thing that they're using, which muddles the water here a little bit, is they keep on using the word engagement. So they says that tweet... that we just talked about, where it had 3,500 engagements. Now, an engagement could be a bunch of people going, I don't understand your tweet, or it's rubbish, or fighting against that. It's not proof that leads in itself to hate.
Moving on to Friday's Telegraph. What's the latest on Trump, Josh?
Trump pleads not guilty and waives Georgia arraignment, which sort of surprises me because after the big hoo-ha with him getting that beautiful picture last week, I would have thought he would like a chance to... Like, he could raise more money if he'd gone in and had this arraignment.
Yes.
But he's obviously decided not to. He said not guilty. And this is just a bit of a placeholder story before we actually start seeing some trials.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that the Georgia governor, who Brian Kemp, who is a Republican himself, has also basically dismissed any demands to have impeachment proceedings against Ms. Willis, who is the prosecutor.
Now, I imagine, Nick, you're of the opinion that all of this is a weaponised legal system going on.
How dare you, Andrew? That happens to be exactly what I think, but it was a lucky guess. Yeah, and that's why I don't even worry about the details, because it's so absurd. I mean, you had Bill Clinton, for example, lost the nuclear codes. He had this guy, Sandy Berger, who admitted to cutting up classified documents, and he got a $10,000 fine. That's all he got. He could have got a much bigger fine. He could have got prison time. But they're going after Trump because it's Trump, and we know this. And not just Trump. They've gone after... Look at the people who have been arrested or raided in the early hours of the morning. Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Peter Navarro, Rudy Giuliani. So it's like a Goodfellas scene where they're just like a montage where they're just whacking them all.
So you agree that they are gangsters, then?
I agree that Biden is behaving like a gangster, whacking them all, because...
Yeah, he's the Corleone at the end of The Godfather, taking them out of the baptism.
And I just think it's so short-sighted because it pulls America apart as a country. It creates anger and resentment, and it creates an amazing mugshot from Trump that everyone just loves anyway.
I mean, that's the fact that he's raised $7 million for his campaign.
But you could argue that Trump was pulling America apart anyway by denying that a legitimate election took place.
Which I don't think he did, you see. And they've never done this before. It's just so...
Yeah, but no one's been as brazen as him in the past.
I don't know. I think this is. I think whichever side of the political aisle you're on, this is good news for Trump, and I think the Democrats should have maybe thought a little more carefully about it.
Yeah, it's obviously you're assuming they're going to have fair elections.
Well, it's obviously playing in his favour. Anyway, that's going to do for part 3. In the final section, we're looking at biohazards, monsters, and finding out what couples should never do in bed. Don't go away.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. Let's get straight back into it with Friday's Times and racial language never acceptable. Josh, what's this?
Indeed, bank manager unfairly sacked for using the N-word tribunal rules. So this is a Lloyds bank manager. This is during a training session, and in the process of this training session, he said the N-word in full. So he said the full, the proper...
But he wasn't, apparently they found he wasn't saying
but he wasn't saying it as a slur. He was using it as an example because this was a session dealing with these kind of issues. And they're, in the this is in the court, they're basically saying that because he's dyslexic, he couldn't verbalise himself well enough. So he said the word...
Yeah.
I've got dyslexia, but I can still say just...
I'd rather you didn't.
It was Nat West, because this was Barclays, so they say the N-word. Nat West.
Now, the thing about this, Nick, is it's almost as though when it comes to this particular racial slur, context is completely irrelevant in terms of the way that it's treated. There was a story in America where an academic quoted a James Baldwin piece of work which used the word. It was in quotations in a literary class and still got fired.
Yeah.
Now, this seems to me mad.
Well, I might argue the opposite, that context is hyper-relevant to the point of neuroticism, i.e., if you're a rapper saying it in a song, you can say it as much as you like, or if you're of the correct race. The classic example was Kendrick Lamar brought someone on stage to rap. She sang his lyrics, and he suddenly stopped it and told her off because she was white. So it's this absurd thing where one group could say it in a massive amount, another group will get sacked and destroyed if they say it once. It's kind of very tense situation.
But it's about intent, surely.
It's about intent,
that's got to be the...
Exactly.
But the two things that are also mental about this story is the first thing is, look, and it's a terrible word, right? But the person who was leading this this training session supposedly said, first of all, that to speak freely and to learn and to be clumsy. So this was like invite it. And then the moment that he said it,
Not this
this person then took 5 days leave to recover. Now, I'm of an ethnicity. If people say certain words to me, I've heard it can be upsetting, but you don't need to take 5 days.
And she launched a vitriolic attack on him and in turn on him. But he apparently just blurted things out due to his dyslexia. The only thing don't understand, I thought that was Tourette's, so I don't... But he had problems
I think
with
he just can't
sentence
articulate
construction.
himself well.
Yeah, so it's very harsh.
All right, we're going to move on to the Mirror now. This is not a very romantic story, is it? Some would call it the death of love.
I think the exact opposite, Andrew. This is doctor warns couples never to share a bed, urging them to sleep apart instead. And I'm so glad, because it's impossible to sleep with someone in the room, and I'm so glad this is being acknowledged.
If you don't have a girlfriend.
That's the first problem. But then if you do, you have to banish her to another room. And it's science, because...
Sorry, heteronormative boyfriend.
Boyfriend. He's saying that you won't get rapid eye movement sleep, you won't get proper sleep, or you might. It just depends on your
So if it's it's not just snoring, it's also body heat.
A lot of women do snore, though, and they don't admit it after.
And a lot of women have body heat.
Yeah, the heat also stops you cooling down, so it stops you going to sleep, and also the snoring and all of it. And the thing is, people act like you're absolutely mental if you say this. But look at who shared a separate room. The Queen, our beloved Queen Elizabeth II. She had separate rooms. And do you know why people... The thing I read of why people started sleeping in the same bed was that it was the Industrial Revolution and there just wasn't enough space. So if the Queen has separate rooms, but it's poverty that forces people together, which is the cooler one?
What about when we had huts and stuff like that? Are you telling me that these huts had...
We had separate huts.
Separate huts.
No, Josh, the problem with this is, even though there is now medical... I mean, they're saying here that often there are people who are chronically sleep deprived because they're sleeping with their partner, but you still couldn't have that conversation, could you? Let's sleep in separate rooms, darling.
I know a friend of mine, they sleep in separate rooms because they both snore, actually. But no, I can't. But my wife has that thing where you wake up screaming, like, you know, she wakes up screaming like, I want a divorce. I want a divorce.
Yeah,
it's a dream.
A friend of mine's girlfriend woke up in the night and tried to stab him in the face with a pair of scissors.
Yes.
Does that fit into this category of disrupting a night's sleep?
Yes, exactly. That's the kind of thing they do, Andrew. So that's the problem.
Who's they?
I was hoping to get away with that. Yeah. My thing is, I'm moving into a two-bedroom. There'll be loads of hot chicks, but I'll be telling them all to sleep in the other room after I've told them all about my podcast. That's how it's going to work.
A date with Nick Dixon.
Yeah, talking about his podcast, calling them hot chicks. I'm sure that'll go down really well. The Times now, a story about fatherhood, so obviously got to go to Josh on this one.
New dads who've lost that loving feeling should have a second child. So
you've had how many?
5.
You are very fecund, aren't you?
Thank you, and very happy. So maybe they're onto something.
Yeah.
They basically, this in Germany, they took average scores of happiness, and they were at their peak before they had a kid. This is just for the men.
Yes.
And then when they had a kid, it went way down.
It goes down.
But then when they had the second kid, it went way back up.
But is that just in comparative terms?
Yes.
Because they've got they've got this screaming dwarf in the house, and then they realise
they also have a child.
And they have the child, and then they realise, well, we'll have another one. Oh, it's not as bad as the first one, therefore I think I'm happier than I was before we had any.
That could be it, but can I just say, I think it's because the two kids, this is after 2 years, like when the second child is 2,
yes.
And then what happens is the kids start playing, and then you don't have to deal with them.
Yeah, but look at the numbers. Andrew's completely right. After the second kid, it climbed back up to 18, but it still wasn't anywhere near 20.3, which was their score before having any children. So they were happier before children. Now, I advocate we need higher birth rates. I'm just saying they make you miserable.
True happiness is where, as a male, you have to realise that you are now secondary to the children, and as soon as you accept that, then life's great.
I've accepted that you're secondary, John.
I am secondary. I'm fine with it.
Moving on to the Telegraph now. Nick, has this give you an appetite for a spot of wild camping?
Oh, this one, yeah. So this is Glencoe visitors turning parts of Scottish beauty spot into biohazards with toilet waste. It's classic tourist stuff. I mean, we have this problem up in the lakes. It's peat-rich, low-level soils, Andrew, and they're a great topic for comedy on a comedy show. The campfires had damaged the Glen's peat-rich, low-level soils. And also, stuff happens with the waste. I don't know. Don't go and ruin
they're saying take your waste with you in a sealed container.
Yeah.
So basically take Tupperware to Scotland. And
this is a grim story.
It is grim, and also they've got so much deep-fried food up there. That's the problem. Maybe stop deep-frying everything. It won't be so.
Well, because I'm so disgusted by this story, we're going to move on finally to this one. This is in the Telegraph, and I think now we've got hard evidence that the monster exists.
New Loch Ness monster sighting. This is Chai Kelly. She took these photos in 2018, but she was ashamed to reveal them, and now she has revealed what can only look like a big poo.
No, it looks like a monster to me. Can we have a look at it?
It is a monster poo.
There it is.
Look, I've done ones definitely that look like that.
No, Josh, that is a prehistoric beast reclining and swimming. And I think she shouldn't have been ashamed. I think she should have released this straight away. I'm convinced that there is a monster in that
That looks
lake.
like my toilet.
No, it's definitely real.
What do you think, Nick? We haven't got much time. Do you think the Loch Ness Monster is real? And do you think this
100%.
proves it? You do?
Yes, and this proves it. They can't find it because they do things like forget to turn on the recording equipment, which is in the story. But yes, it's real.
Well,
okay, well then Matthew Sweet's going to clip that one up. Ofcom, are we allowed to say
I
that
think we're allowed to say we believe in the Loch Ness Monster. I think that's fine. That is all we've got time for. I'm afraid because of a technical glitch, we can't look at the front covers for the end of the show. I apologise for that, but thank you anyway to my guests, Josh Howie and to Nick Dixon. Nick Dixon, in fact, is back tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Josh Howie, but also with Nicholas DeSanto. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, please stay tuned because it's time for breakfast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a mishmash tomorrow, a misty, murky start. Some places will see a few showers, but some spots will see some warm sunshine too. It's a messy situation because we've got an old area of low pressure hanging around, and these weather fronts have been bringing cloud and rain across many areas through the day. The possibility of 1 or 2 heavy showers just in the far southeast through the night, staying fairly damp and murky and misty over parts of northern England, and some of that light rain trickling into southern Scotland as well. Northern Scotland staying dry and clear and quite chilly. Temperatures well down into single figures. Further south, a pretty mild night. Temperatures holding up in the mid-teens for some. Into Friday, as I said, a bit of a mishmash. The Midlands, northern England, parts of southern Scotland, fairly drab for much of the day, actually. Overcast. Pretty cloudy too for Northern Ireland. Some light rain and drizzle here and there, especially to the east of the Pennines. Further south, something a bit brighter, sunny spells, but there will also be a sprinkling of showers, mostly dry over northern Scotland. 20 degrees here, 23 possibly in the south with some sunshine. A cool feel, though, with that more persistent cloud over northern England, 16 or 17 here. Saturday may also start a bit misty. There'll be 1 or 2 isolated showers, but for most of us, Saturday looks pretty good if you're after dry and bright weather. Some decent spells of sunshine and turning warmer with temperatures more widely over 20 degrees Celsius, and Sunday also set fair with some warm sunny spells. Goodbye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The big story of the day is Labour saying up to 120,000 people have died in the last year on NHS waiting lists. Is this all the fault of the government, or would many of them have died anyway? We'll debate that. Where to put all these young men crossing the English Channel? Well, now, in Huddersfield, students are being kicked out of halls of residence. We'll go live to Huddersfield. And joining me on Talking Pints, well, he was a banker, he was a politician, a renowned Thatcherite and right-winger. Sir Gerald Howarth will join me on Talking Pints. But before all of that, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nigel, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest.